Welcome to Inside Steelers Nation on SNR. I'm Randy Slack with Matt Williamson and Dale Lolley. It is Tuesday. Mike Tomlin had his final press conference of the 2017-2018 season, and I guess now we kind of can start looking ahead. We dissected the game yesterday, the 45-42 loss in the divisional round to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I really don't know what else can be said about that game that we haven't already said already. Extremely disappointing game for the Steelers. People were already jumping on. Well, not already. They've already been there. People want Mike Tomlin fired.
Yeah, apparently none of us in the media are keeping it. Matt knows where I'm going here. We're not holding Mike Tomlin accountable.
Oh, okay.
Like that's going to matter a hill of beans. If I say, Mike Tomlin should be fired, is that holding him accountable? Is that the only way that's held accountable? We've already said yesterday, none of us like the onside kick call.
Correct.
We're all in agreement with that.
Yep,
none of us like to pitch on fourth down.
Yep.
There were other instances.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, that's holding somebody accountable. And I might add, Mike Tomlin has said, I take responsibility for all those calls that were made in that game. Mm-hmm. You might not agree with his reasoning why he did those things, but he took accountability for those things. I don't know what fans want. I'm in a total flipping loss here. They want people fired. They want the head coach fired. You're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers here. They're not going to make a knee-jerk reaction and fire their head coach. They've had 3 head coaches longer than most of the people
My whole
listening.
Lifetime.
Yeah, 90% of our listeners out there have only seen 3 head coaches in the Steelers' history, at most. Most of them have only seen 2. A lot of them. I mean, come on. This is one of the things that other franchises look at the Steelers for and say, that's what we want to be. That's what we want to do. It's laughable that people are being as moronic about this as they are. And I hate to use that word because I understand they're fans. They take this seriously. I take this seriously. This is my job. This is what I do. But for God's sakes, just step back and take a deep breath. It's not the end of the world. They lost a football game. There's a next season. It's not like this is the last game they will ever play. They lost a game. They got outplayed. People can talk all they want to about saying, "Oh, well, they lost to a team they were favored against. They shouldn't have lost that football game." Jacksonville beat them twice. Jacksonville was the better team on both occasions. Maybe Jacksonville is just a bad matchup for this Steelers team as currently constructed. I think there are some things that can be done here that will make this a better team moving forward. They can get more of a playmaker at the safety position. They can replace Ryan Shazier in this offseason. They can do some things to get better as a team. But, you're talking about a team that has won 10 or more games in 4 straight seasons. You don't blow that up. You tweak it.
Right. And I can't speak for the other members of the media in Pittsburgh, but I have not been gentle at all on their coaching for that particular performance. I thought they were outcoached. I thought they made a lot of individual mistakes. There's a couple more I've noticed since then I wanted to bring up today. That being said, be careful what you wish for. I mean, don't have the knee-jerk reaction and say, we're going to fire this guy. That's crazy.
Anytime that you fire somebody, you should have somebody in mind that you think is going to come in and do a better job.
Absolutely.
Who right now out there is going to come in and do a better job than Mike Tomlin has done?
And even if you had someone in mind, let's say Josh McDaniels wanted to come here and you loved him, which isn't going to happen. He's
already failed, I might add,
right,
in his other head coaching position, job.
But let's say you love somebody. Ben's got a year or 2 or 3 left. You
want to blow this thing up.
Let's start all over with one of the best teams in the league.
It's asinine.
That's already the favorite for the division next year, and it makes no sense. And then you hear the stuff today that minority ownership is partitioning or trying to get Tomlin
acting
out.
like a bunch of college football boosters.
Right. And they're not going to listen. That's not going to happen. It's not a smart move. There may be some coaching changes.
There'll be some changes on the staff, and there'll be some changes in the lineup.
Yeah,
but they're
as
not
there
gonna,
always is.
Yeah, but they're not going to blow this thing up, and there'll be some changes. Some guys will be released who are currently under contract. It won't just be attrition by,
free agency.
Right. They're going to be aggressive with this because they know they're not dumb.
This Bell, Brown, Ben window isn't open long.
Guess what? These guys get paid to do this too. I mean, it's just fascinating to me. I mean, I've heard people say, "Oh, Kevin Colbert needs to be fired." Really?
Wow. He may have built the best roster in the league.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I mean, he's had one losing season as a GM.
Wow.
Think about that.
Yeah.
He's been a GM since 2000, and they've had one losing season. And he didn't have Ben Roethlisberger all those years.
True. He's been here a long time, right.
So,
forget how long he's been here, right.
I mean, he not only built basically most of the roster for the 2005 Super Bowl, and some of those were holdovers, the Joey Porters, the Alan Fanekas,
right.
the Hines Wards. But the second one was basically all his guys, because Faneca and Porter and a bunch of those guys, other than Ward, it was all his guys. And, oh, by the way, the third one was even more so his.
I mean, that's way more ludicrous to me than making coaching changes. I mean, he's built the best roster in the league,
and
give or take.
And consistently done so. And they rebuilt this on the fly a couple years ago from those great Super Bowl teams.
Right.
They rebuilt the defense on the fly and didn't have a losing record.
And that's what's crazy about it is a lot of teams will change their scheme or rebuild a whole unit, and then you're 5-11, 6-10 for a couple years or whatever, and then you get back there. This team hasn't, and a lot of that has to do with Kevin and the coaching staff. And not only has Kevin built a phenomenal roster for today that just about every team in the league, and I have a little exercise I want to talk to you guys about on that level, but they isn't set up for these next 2 years where the only free agents to note this year are Hubbard and Bell, and I don't think Bell's going anywhere.
Bell's not going anywhere.
I mean, to only lose a guy like Hubbard,
if you don't
nothing.
want to, you're not going to lose a starter from this team.
Right.
If you don't want to.
Right.
But they're going to make some changes. They're going to go out and they're going to acquire a new inside linebacker.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. They're going to go out and acquire a new free safety.
Yes.
I don't think anybody doubts any of that stuff. They talk about...
And that happens every year. Use a first-round pick on something.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, even last year, they could have gone into last year with the only major starter loss being Lawrence Timmons. Now, it would have been good to have Lawrence Timmons after you lost Ryan Shazier, but hindsight's 2020.
Mm.
They still tweaked that roster from last year to this year. They went out and they basically made over their entire cornerback.
The whole secondary.
Room, yeah.
Or the corners, yeah.
All new corners, basically, starting in that secondary.
Which is one of the hardest positions to find in the league.
And you could say, well, they got fortunate that the Browns cut Joe Hayden.
They did, but pounced on him.
The Browns cut Joe Hayden, and he wanted to come here.
And 30 other teams didn't end up with him.
Right. So, really, stop with the knee-jerk reactions. Just calm down, people. Come down off the ledge and breathe a little bit.
And to take it a step further, even a year from now, they're not going to get hit real hard in free agency.
No.
Like, they're set up with all these guys that develop, the Tuitts of the world and the Castros. They're not all looming free agents. The guys they want are locked up for a while. So,
and to your point, talking about Colbert and talking about how they've been a good team, they haven't had high draft picks either.
That's a great point. Or
hitting,
cap space.
Yeah, they're hitting on picks at 25 and 30.
Compare that to Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's easy.
The top 10.
It's easy to get
Jacksonville
Jalen Ramsey.
should be good. When you get Jalen Ramsey and some of these guys, and then you go out and you spend a gajillion dollars in free agency because you're not paying your quarterback anything.
A guy in the league texted me the other day after the Steelers lost saying, boy, I would have loved to have been the GM of the Jags for the last 4 or 5 years. Like, how can you not build a winner?
Right.
I mean, you're doing something very, very wrong if you don't build a winner when you can go sign Calais Campbell, Malik Jackson. You pick in the top 10 or 5 every year.
Yeah.
And to me, and that's why I go with the Browns. I want to be the Browns GM. To have those immense resources, it's such an advantage over what the Patriots, the Packers, the Steelers, these perennially top teams have to deal with every year. And obviously those guys have a quarterback, and that helps. But, Kevin doesn't have – he has like the least cap space in the league this year, and he'll still add somebody, I'm sure, from outside the organization.
I mean, they've got wiggle room to be able to do things. I'm told they're going to try to extend Roethlisberger for at least 1 or 2 years.
That'd be great.
That would free up some cash space. He's going to count $23.8 million against their cap next year. I think they can bring that number down to free up some cap space. Mike Mitchell's not going to be back. I would be utterly shocked if that happens. That frees up another $5 million. He played free safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers the entire season. Had no interceptions and 2 pass defenses.
I can't remember one big play.
2 pass defenses.
Yeah.
You can't get that out of your free safety. And that was just that problem was only exasperated when they lost Ryan Shazier. Because Shazier covered up a lot of the inadequacies.
That middle triangle
at all 3
in the
levels.
Field was really exposed.
I mean, you're talking about an inside linebacker that led the team in tackles, interceptions, and pass defenses at the time of his injury. Yeah. And still finished second on the team by 1 in tackles.
Wow, I didn't realize
at the end of the season.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
And was still second in pass defenses at the end of the season and tied for the team league in interceptions.
Yeah.
That's how impactful that guy was. Again, we talked about him in training camp. He was the one guy they could least afford to lose
anybody on defense. Yeah.
You could lose anybody else. You couldn't lose that guy, and he's the guy that they lost.
You talked about Mike Mitchell and potentially parting ways with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's talk about some other guys who could be not with the team next year when we come back on Inside Steelers Nation on SNR. Welcome back to Inside Steelers Nation on SNR. I'm Randy Slack with Dale Lolley, Matt Williamson. We will hear from Cam Hayward one more time coming up later in the show around 5:40. And, prior to the break, we were talking about who the Steelers are going to be looking to get, potentially acquire, and kind of the changes that they can make for this roster. We brought up, of course, inside linebacker because, with all the question marks on Ryan Shazier, they're going to need somebody there. And
Can we put that on hold for 1 minute, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Because I just want to go back to last segment because I got in a really interesting Twitter conversation. Ross Tucker put this out, and he tagged me because he knew I'm a Steeler guy, and we used to do a podcast together. And he said, I'm sitting here thinking, this is what Ross said, how many Patriots would start on the Steelers? And immediately he named Gronk and Brady and McCourty, and then he was a loss. And I helped him, and I was like, Gilmore would, Butler might. If you swap guys, maybe Mason goes from right guard to left guard and starts for Foster.
Chung would.
Chung probably would, although he's not having a good year. Their inside linebackers are terrible too, so who cares? And if he was doing it, he didn't mention Cooks because he said Cooks was the number 1 receiver and he's the same spot as Brown. Well, I'm like, well, if you make the best team, Cooks would be probably over Juju. So 5 or 6, really. I mean, that's pretty crazy. I mean, maybe Flowers, who plays kind of a different position, would be your Bud Dupree. But that's a pretty darn good roster when the team has gone to 7 straight AFC championships, maybe only has 6 or 7 dudes that would start for you.
But I think the difference is, and this is a little different as well, I think the depth. They're 1 through 53. While they may not have the star power that the Steelers and Brady and Gronkowski are as good as anybody in the league.
Sure.
But I think their 1 through 53 is better suited to what they want to do.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
And they use them all.
They're like the running backs, for example.
Right.
You have 3 or 4 of them that all play, and they all help on special teams.
And they're all
do
equally,
a lot. Right.
So while they don't have the talent at the upper end, I think 1 through 53, they are as talented as the Steelers.
Yes. I don't know. I mean, depends how much weight you put on Brady.
If you're putting it, if you're waiting, like it's a draft class or a incoming freshman class, and you give this guy's a 5-star player and these guys are 3-star players and so on and so forth.
They'd have a lot of 2s and 3s.
They've got a lot of 2s and 3s where the Steelers have at the bottom of their roster some 1s.
Yeah. And something like Spence and some of those guys that had to see the field by accident, So
I think it balances out. I think the roster is as talented as the Steelers, and it may not be quite as talented, but it's almost as talented, if not as talented, in my opinion.
No, I hear you. And Brady makes up for a lot of problems, obviously.
And Gronkowski makes up for a lot of problems.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're talking about 2 generational players.
And then we took it a step further, though, and said, how many Patriot defenders would start for Jacksonville? I think McCourty. That's all I can give. That's all I can give you. And that's a pretty darn good defense. How many Steelers would start in Jacksonville? I mean, couple maybe. I mean, Hayward would mix in with Malik and those guys, and Shazier healthy probably would, but they don't have maybe none. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty darn good defense.
Well, I mean if you're going to
do those kind of things,
healthy players, Hightower starts
for the Steelers.
For the Steelers, he would start
probably for them.
He would start for Jacksonville over Puzzlesny.
Yes, but he'd probably come off the field with Smith and Jack like Buzz Leslie does.
Yeah.
You know, like he'd be a part-time.
But how many of
guy
the Jaguars offensive players would start?
None. 0. Yeah.
Well, you got Bortles. No, just,
I mean, none of the receivers.
I just don't want Malik Jackson
maybe
to fight
Fournette would
For the
start,
Steelers? Or for-
would start for New England.
Maybe.
But he wouldn't
Linder.
play all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they would still mix and match and do all the things.
Yeah, I don't think any start for the Steelers.
See, I think that's the one thing that the Patriots do, and I hate that. Well, New England doesn't do this, New England doesn't do that, and whatever. Okay, the one thing that they do that I do think that other teams don't is they use the entire roster
Very well.
very well.
Yep. Yes.
Every guy on that roster has a role, and they play that role, and I think it keeps, again, nobody is ever happy necessarily with the role that they play on any sports team. They all want to be starters. They all want to be contributors. But I think they get them to buy into those roles, and there's none of the...
They use their third tight end.
Right. They use them constantly.
Right, yeah.
And not that the Steelers don't. I mean, you saw Grimble on the field
Sure.
a reasonable amount of time. But the fourth string running back, they carry 12 guys in their roster just for special teams, and that's all they do. But they're
And they're
really
always
good
good
at
on
it.
special
Yeah.
teams, right? As a result,
I just think they do a good job of that.
they do. They're. You're right. The bottom third of their roster. Not that it's more important to them than other teams, but maybe they pay more attention to it than other teams.
And I think part of the reason that they're able to get guys like that, and a lot of them are guys who were starters on other teams or guys who are contributors on other teams.
They grabbed Chris Long last year.
Right.
Guys like that.
But they're able to do that because they've won. Much like the Steelers were able to go out and get Hayden and Alu this year.
Sure.
Because guys want to come and try to win. If you're a player and you're saying, well, I can go here, and Chris Long was a perfect example.
Yeah.
He
didn't go to
did
the
it for
Jets.
1 year. He took less money to come win his championship, and then he moved on. They get guys to do that because because Brady's still there.
Absolutely.
And that's the only reason.
The
they
veterans want to win; they'll take less.
Yeah.
That's a good formula.
yeah, that team, other than Brady, if you took one guy off of the Patriots, maybe Gronk, but even
Gronk
then
would be the one.
they won a Super Bowl without him.
True.
So,
Yeah. Just last
you
year.
take anybody off that team and they still go.
Yeah.
I think that really speaks to the depth of, oh, man, they're screwed now. They don't have this guy.
It's all about Brady. It really is. I mean, if you took Brady and put him on this Steelers roster and moved Roethlisberger over to their roster,
I think the Steelers are the champs.
they're playing the AFC Championship game this weekend in Pittsburgh.
They're 15-1, and
Yeah.
right. But I also think the Patriots probably get a bye if they would have started Jimmy Garoppolo all year.
Possibly.
Because the AFC stinky,
They'd be
though.
16-0.
Well, yeah, we'll never know. I mean,
Jimmy never loses.
Jimmy
if
doesn't
you
lose.
took Jimmy Garoppolo and put him on the Jaguars, they're 14-2.
I think that's the best team in the league.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
We said the same thing about Alex Smith. If you took Alex Smith and put him on the Jaguars, they're
Cousins
14-2.
Yes, because Bortles is that bad.
Yeah.
The jump from terrible
And their
to
defense
above average
their
huge.
defense is that much, and their schedule this year was not difficult.
No, they'd run away with that division.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, but it was a fun little thing we did on Twitter. That was how many Patriots would start for the Steelers. There's really not that many.
Be careful talking about Blake. Malik Jackson will find you and he'll call you out. Those videos have been just hilarious.
I haven't seen anybody heard about it.
And that's another thing too that going back to that game again with the Jags and the Steelers, and I know everybody wants to put on, guys that maybe were tweeting or saying that we're going to play the Patriots. I don't know if that really was a distraction too much for the Steelers, and I don't know if the Steelers weren't the only people that contributed to that to the Jacksonville Jaguars. The national media was pretty much Steelers Patriots.
Sure.
And they would ask Jalen Ramsey, how do you feel about people saying it's going to be the Steelers and the Patriots for the AFC Championship game? They're asking him. Like, what? Are you
What do you
surprised?
think he's going to say?
Not
Yeah.
Are you
show
surprised
up?
that they're mad that you're writing them off?
As they should be. And they
Yeah.
use it as motivation, and that's good work. Yeah.
But again, if you shouldn't need to be motivated.
No, but a little extra.
I
I'm
don't
sure
even
they're
know if
fired
there's a
up
little
either way.
extra. I mean, it allows you to talk a little bit more when you're winning.
I bet the Steelers lose on Sunday either way.
Right. It
Like,
made
I don't think
I
that's
don't.
the
I
difference
don't
in the
think that
game.
made a bit of difference in the outcome of the game.
No,
it just
wasn't
allowed the Jaguars to talk a little bit more after the game,
Sure.
and during the game.
And it's like the Eagles walking around with their their stupid underdog helmets or their
The dog masks, yeah.
and stuff. Yeah. I mean, and Brady's done it forever. Michael Jordan's done it forever. That he remembers when he gets cut from his basketball team. The world's against me.
Yeah,
And,
Heinz Ward was famous for it. Nobody gave me a chance.
Right.
Heinz, you were a third-round pick.
You're a third-round pick. I went to a bunch of Pro Bowls. Right.
Well, I mean,
You guys
everybody
never forget that
They all
stuff.
want to play
Whatever
that chip on their
motivates you,
shoulder.
great.
Yeah.
But,
Everybody in Boston thinks that everybody's against them. I mean, they are because
Well, at this
we all
point,
hate
yeah.
we all hate the Patriots.
Yeah.
Well,
But
and plus all the people in Boston. I'm sorry if you live up there and you're listening to this, but you're all a bunch of idiots.
all
I
of
mean,
them.
act like you've at least done it before. You don't need to act like you're still the downtrodden. Come on.
They're the
Just
Empire,
because the
man.
Red Sox didn't win anything, Boston didn't win anything other than the Celtics for 60 years. Now they've won won a little bit. Now that they act like they're the sports world begins and ends there. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
It really is.
I have no I don't know. I just know that they've won an awful lot lately in the sport that I cover. And when I used to go to ESPN all the time, all everyone talked about was Yankee Red Sox. I mean, Bristol, that's all you ever heard.
Well,
about
that's because
the
that's
time,
the only
right.
thing they ever show.
That's all they ever showed. Too, right.
God's
Everyone's
sake!
there from New
If
York
they
or
played a
Boston.
game in somebody's backyard, a pickup game, they would show that if they could.
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Like nobody else matters.
Well, Slack, I apologize for hijacking your segment there.
That's
we can
okay.
get to potential defections.
what were we
here,
talking
kind of,
about?
next
We'll
time around.
we'll talk about well. How about we just do it next?
Yes,
When we
perfect.
come back, we'll talk about who might be gone from this Steelers organization heading into 2018. This is Inside Steelers Nation on SNR.